Hi, it's Allie, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit here about September 11th, 2001. And I did this earlier in the semester when I talked about the Challenger shuttle explosion in 1986, and I just kind of talked about it from my perspective. And the hope is that for those of you who weren't alive yet or were young when this happened, this will be a chance to hear it from somebody that you know. And I really feel like when you hear about moments in history from people that you know and care about, that it becomes a little bit more relevant. And I think we've all found that with our oral history papers this semester. So, anyway, again, this is just from my perspective, my memory, and one of the things we're looking at this week when we're studying these kinds of televisual tragedies, such as September 11th, 2001, is how sometimes our memory is not exact. And so, I didn't do much research here before it. I just wanted to kind of recall that day from my own memory. And so, what's happening for me in 2001 is I'm between undergrad and graduate school, and I'm working at a museum in Madison, Wisconsin, my hometown. And I'm working at the Madison Art Center. It's now the Madison Museum of Contemporary Art, and it's on State Street in downtown Madison. And that really matters because it's pretty early in the morning when this all happens, and I'm on my way to work. And this is I had cell phone back then, but it's not like a time of smartphones. It's where the news comes like a live feed, and everyone's telling you what's going on social media like Facebook or Instagram or something like that. So I didn't get any alert in any way. I was living with a friend, and I woke up, tried not to wake the friend up, and kind of snuck off to work. And I rode a little motor scooter at that time, and I was I would ride around the square and then kind of go the back way to the museum, and then kind of park my scooter by the bicycles. And I did that, pretty much every day I went to work. I did that same route. But on this day, as I got to the Capitol, the first sign that I had that stuff was weird was I started seeing too much activity like around the Capitol. And I don't think I actually saw them pulling the giant cement barriers out now. I think that happened like a little bit later, and I put that all together. But there was a flurry of activity of workers around the Capitol, and they were starting to close the streets. And I'm not sure if it was a policeman or Capitol Police or Madison Police. There's different police downtown, but somebody asked me to like just walk my scooter, and so I did, and I walked right down State Street with my scooter since I couldn't ride it, and State Street's a pedestrian mall, so you can't ride a vehicle down it. But since I had to walk anyway, I remember I went that direction to the museum, and that's the next time I saw strange activity. Was too many things, too many people. A flutter of activity was happening on State Street. And then I got to work, and no one was at their desks. Like, again, this is a place I'd worked for quite some time. I was often in the galleries. I'm an art handler. That's the other job I've done a lot of, other than teaching, is work as a preparator and an art handler in museums. And so often I'd be on the floor in the galleries working with a piece or on a project, or else in the shop. And I checked my boss, and he's not in the shop. And then I walked through to like punch my time clock, and none of the office workers were anywhere they usually are. And they're a lot more likely to be at their desk than I would have been, or my boss. And then I noticed that I kind of heard a little tiny sound. And I noticed that everybody was gathered, and they were all in like one person's office. And when I got in there, my boss had brought out this teeny tiny television. It's like a 4-inch screen. For him it was for camping, and we would use it in the back shop when like the Badgers got to the NCAA tournament. We'd put the game on our 4-inch screen as we worked for the day. And that was the TV that he had brought out. And there were other TVs, but he just knew where that one, grabbed it when the tragedy happened, and he brought it out. And then everybody was gathered around that watching, and I came in completely clueless. No idea what's going on really, other than like that flurry of activity that I talked about, but I did not put those pieces together till much later that what was happening was related to the events of September 11th. Um, so I get to the little room in the office at the job, and everyone's gathered around the teeny tiny television. And like at that point, I saw the image on the TV, and again, it was really small, so I had to like look, and there was like some kind of bomb going off, and I was like, "What?" And that's what it looked like to me: smoke, smoldering, and I just thought some kind of bomb had gone off. And then, like, I kind of got filled in, and I'm not sure where I am in real time. Like, was this right after the second building had been hit? And I do know enough without studying, like, right before this lecture. I know that there's not coverage of the first, like, live coverage of the first building getting hit. That all of the images we see of that come from people who had cameras out for other reasons who turned to it. But then, between the first and the second buildings, all the news turned their attention to what was happening, and then the second plane hit. So I'm not sure if I got there right in the middle of like when the news happened and then the second plane got hit, or if it was like one of the first replays. But it was all happening right then. And like I said, like as a TV teacher now, it's pretty fascinating to have that real life experience. That what happened when this was going on? Did was it the radio? Did people go quick turn on a news station on the radio? No, it was a 4-inch television that was ran to an office, and everybody gathered around it to figure out what was happening. And then after that, my day got rather interesting because again, I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, and so this is one of the 50 state capital cities in the country, and every capital city went on high alert, and that's what I was seeing at the Capitol. And all of a sudden, we're also the museum. Right behind the museum is a federal courthouse, and so all of those types of buildings shut down activities for the day. The federal courthouse was, all cases stopped being heard for the day. It closed down, and all of those people got sent over to us because we were this little museum inside of the Civic Center of Madison. And so all I did was run and fetch TVs for hours. And we had a whole bunch of TVs for like AV setups. And mainly not so much for like use in the galleries, like for art, but more for like video that might be like an accompanying part of an exhibition, like in a learning space. And so I gathered like dozens of televisions on the old classic black AV cart, and I rolled them around, setting them up in around the Civic Center, and more people, like they're kind of like people in suits, kind of gathered in front of the televisions is kind of how I recall it, and it that went on for hours, and at the end of my shift, everything was still out because there was still such a need for the TV to be there. And then when I went home, it was just like very strange that all of this was going on the television still. And the other thing that I remember, and this part's kind of trigger warning or whatnot, and not so much for what you'll see, but for what I'll talk about. And that's that one of my best friends lives in New York. He lives in Queens now, but back in 2001, this was right after we were done with undergrad. We got done in like '99, and then he moved out east, and he's living in Manhattan, and he's a piano tuner. And at this time, he was working at the Steinway factory, and so every day he would have to go out, and he wasn't far from Ground Zero at all. And when he left his apartment to go to his job, and then when he came back, this is the part that really, I guess, brought home what happened to me, maybe more than anything else that I heard or saw about this day. And that was that, it was really, for him, it was the stench of death. It was all around him, and when you got home, your clothes were just covered in that, in the soot and the debris and the smell. And so he lived in a very small apartment, and he had no washer, no washing machine or whatever in his unit, and everyone was kind of going through this. So he developed the system of once you got home, he immediately would have to undress and put all of his clothes like in a bag, and he'd either have to wash them that night or just save it for the next load. But if you didn't bag them, that the it was that powerful. And then he'd have to shower, and then all the windows had to stay closed in the apartment. And it still, he said that for like months and months after that, you try your hardest, but it was around you, enveloping you. And so there were a lot of people that were impacted that day, and then there were a lot of people that were impacted for quite some time after. So September 11th, 2001 really was a prominent televisual memory where TV was there. It was transmitting the information. It was letting you know how people were. Like my friend from New York, I didn't hear from him for days because the cell phones were that jammed. And so it was television that was telling me, don't worry about everybody out east. People will get a hold of you. It's just jammed and stuff like that. And so TV was there. And even though social media is with us and the internet at a much higher level than it was even in 2001, TV's really behind quite a lot of the news that we see. And so we might see a clip of it on our social media or on our smartphone, but what we're seeing is actually still television. It's just being transmitted to us through the internet. And so I think TV really adapts and is going to stay with us, being a part of these kinds of televisual tragedies. And as we have looked at throughout the semester, the celebratory moments that we share as a culture are also often transmitted via our small screen. All right, well, anyway, I hope that hearing about this from my perspective, even though I wasn't in New York City, I was just in one of the capital cities of America. I hope hearing about it from someone that you know now, throughout the semester at least, you've gotten to know me a bit. I hope this makes it a bit more relevant. And again, thank you for your attention.